Good afternoon. I'm Vic, one of your interpreters. I'm going to make a quick announcement in Spanish for those that may need or want interpretation into Spanish. Buenas tardes, yo soy Vic, uno de los intérpretes. Si alguien desea interpretación al español, vengan con nosotros. Aquí tenemos equipo para que les demos audífonos y escuchen la presentación totalmente en español. Muchas gracias.
There's anyone that needs interpretation devices, they're over to the left. And while they're doing that, we're going to go ahead and get started. I know we have some parents that needed to drop their students off, so we're probably going to have people that dwindle in, and that will be fine. Welcome. My name is Rhoda Coleman. I'm the principal here at Palm, proud principal here at Palm. Thank you all so much for being here. I do realize that it's immediately after school, and it wasn't the most convenient time, but it was the best time that we could find to be able to have the team here. So we'd like to welcome you. Just a few quick reminders before we get started. We do have childcare in the gym. Coach Anderson and Ms. Gomez, our PE team, are in the gym. They have games set up, they have movies, they have snacks. So if you'd like for your child to go to childcare, that is an option for you. Also, facilities. To the right, we do have restrooms for everyone. They're open. So if you need to take care of any of your needs or anything, you can go right over there to the restrooms. And we're gonna go ahead and get started. I'd like to, again, welcome you, thank you. And to Superintendent Matias and your team, thank you so much for being here. Thank you for coming to listen, to answer our questions. We do have about 90 minutes for this meeting, so I'm gonna go ahead and turn it over to Ms. Allie, and she will facilitate the rest of the meeting.
Thank you so much, Principal Coleman. Hello, everyone. My name is Allie Ghilarducci. I am the Senior Executive Director of Communications and Community Engagement. I just want to review our agenda. So we just had our welcome. We're going to go over some meeting norms and the purpose of this meeting so we're all on the same page. We'll introduce some of the folks that we have here to help answer questions along with our superintendent. We want to provide an overview. Probably everyone's relatively familiar with what is in the current recommended plan, but we just want to make sure that it's really clear to everyone here what we're recommending and kind of the rationale why. If y'all have questions about why this was the recommendation, we'll be having that conversation. Then we also want to be able to respond to some of the questions that were submitted in the comment cards. So we pulled out questions that your community submitted in advance to the comment card, and we're gonna start by addressing those before we get into a bigger conversation. And then we'll talk about next steps, and that will be it. Going over the meeting norms, and I know this is pretty small font, but we are here to build the future together. We want to acknowledge the challenges of the situation that we're in while focusing on ideas and solutions that make our district stronger, more equitable, and sustainable for years to come. We want to honor time, so we're going to try to ask that if you're speaking, that you try to limit your comments to a minute, and we're going to try to keep our responses brief enough so that there's space for everyone. We want to honor the process, which just means following along with the agenda, so that we can get to hear from everybody. Honor intent and impact. We may disagree on ideas, but we want to assume positive intent and focus on our shared goal, which is having strong, equitable schools for all students. We're going to honor space and voice. That means if you do speak once, we're going to ask that we let everyone else that's interested in speaking speak before we have you speak a second time. We want to try to stay solution-oriented, so focusing on ideas, solution, understanding, as opposed to blame or frustration. And lastly, we are here to embrace and demonstrate empathy. We know these are difficult conversations, but we're going to meet them with compassion, clarity, and honesty, and that's our commitment to y'all. Las normas en español. So the purpose of today's meeting, much like what we said in the agenda, is that we want to make sure that we respond to some of those frequently asked questions that you already let us know that were on your mind when you first saw the draft plan. We want to gain a shared understanding of what is proposed and why. And then we, as a leadership team, want to gain insights into any of your thoughts and ideas that could inform potential refinements to the plan, things that we can incorporate. We are going to have a revised version of the plan this Friday. And that's going to be directly reflective of the things that we heard in the comment cards that we are able to incorporate. And the final draft it will be going before the board November 20th. And with that, I'm going to pass it over to our superintendent to give an introduction.
Yeah, thank you, Allie. I very much appreciate all of y'all coming out this afternoon and having a conversation. As Allie said, this is a draft plan. We are refining it. It's really, really important that we get input from our community as we take the next step. And I want to also acknowledge just how disruptive this is. It's not lost on me that these types of changes are very challenging to move through as a community. It's hard, it's sad. I just want to apologize that we're having to go through that at this moment. It's never something I ever thought I would have to do as a superintendent. It's not something I ever wanted to do. The reality is that in Austin ISD, we have some schools that get what they need, and we have strong neighborhood schools in certain parts of Austin. But the reality is that we do not have strong schools everywhere. And it's also true that for the last 144 years, as we have grown to be who we are, decision after decision after decision has been made, and we're at a point where students who look like me, students that look like me, the students here at Palm, haven't gotten what they've needed to be successful. That's just the honest truth. The board and I are very much aligned in that every student should get what they need, period. And every student has a different need. Now, to do that, we have to think about how we work, what resources we have, and be honest about what's changed. And we have to do all of it in this moment when public education, as we see it, is being challenged at every corner along the way. And so our goal is to have strong, vibrant, loving neighborhood schools so that every student has access to them. Right? And what do we mean by thriving or loving? Well, we want students to, love learning, not just be good about taking a test. We want students to feel comfortable in their own skin. We want students to view being bilingual or being bicultural or multicultural as a superpower. And to do that, we have to think about the resources that we have as a school district. And so this plan that we have addresses all of it in a very complex, multi-layered strategy. Right? The first thing that it attempts to do is to align feeder patterns. And when I talk about aligning feeder patterns, I want our elementary school students to go to no more than 1 or 2 middle schools. Keep community together, keep families together. And then have middle schools go to no more than 1 or 2 high schools. Right now in Austin, we have middle schools that go to 4 and 5 high schools. Can you guess where those schools are? They're in East Austin. We also have lots of schools that go 100% into the middle school or high school. And you can guess where those schools are. So this plan aims to realign feeder patterns throughout the city of Austin. Lots of boundary changes, but ultimately we want to keep community together. We want to align programming. And if we do it, we believe that we'll be in a better position long term. 2, the cost of education has gone up year over year for the last many, many years. The state hasn't helped in the way that I believe that they should have. Changes at the federal level have impacted Title II, Title III, and Title IV funds. We have to pay our educators to give them a chance to be able to live in this community. We've made investments the last 3 years in a row in compensation, and we're going to continue to do that. But as we do that, it puts stress on our system, right? Because everything costs money. So to become more efficient, we have to think about where we have misalignments in our school system. And to do that, we have to think about consolidations, boundary changes, and this plan considers that. 3, program alignment. Dual language is something that we believe in Austin. There are school districts around Central Texas who are moving away from it, not us, not our board, not our administration. We're leaning into it. But to do it well, you have to ensure that the program is focused on the students that it was intended for, emergent bilingual students. And right now we have programs that are not balanced. In order to balance them, we need to move them where our students are, our emergent bilingual students, and this plan does that. The other thing that we have to consider is that we are in an accountability system at the state level that's bigger than our school district. I will never, ever, ever say that these letters that are given to our schools represent who our schools are. Right? The state does that. They're the ones that assign Fs and Ds and Cs and As and Bs on a single assessment, taken on a single day in most cases. And the reality of all of it is that I have to ensure that we as a system move through that and break these accountability chains. And we'll talk more about that in a moment. But if we don't address these real risks that come with accountability, we potentially lose the ability of educating our students the way that we believe locally. Your trustees get to determine the direction that we go in as a school district. They are locally elected. And so for us, this plan also has to consider the accountability risk that exists in Austin ISD. If we do not own it, if we do not move the system, then at some point in the future, this district could look very, very different. And we're not going to let that happen. I won't let that happen. So this plan includes it. The other thing that this plan includes are transfer policy changes. In Austin, there have been many policies that have been in place for decades that have moved students from one part of the city to another part of the city, right? Or that the control of the transfer has been at the school level, not at the district level. That creates inequities. Why is it that you have so many students that are choosing to leave the East Side Early College High School vertical and go to Austin High? Right? So this plan is considering all of it. It is a lot, and we will have those conversations with you, and we need to move forward as a school system, because one of the things that we cannot do is not acknowledge this real risk that exists as a school system and kick the can down the road. Because the one thing I cannot take away from our staff or our families is time to plan. I am someone that will give you that time. I'm someone that will make a hard decision, but I'm not going to be more disruptive than I have to be. And so let's talk about what this means for Palm. So Palm Elementary School. I know Palmwell, you have an incredible principal, and Ms. Coleman, she's incredible. Y'all have done incredible things. Y'all have performed year over year. The reality of it all is that there are simply not enough students that live here now that used to live here. And so if we took all the students in this area and assumed that every one of them came to Palm, we would still not get close to filling up the school. And so when we think about how, as a system, we get to become more balanced and provide the resources, we can't have huge inefficiencies. And so the plan includes Palm Elementary School going wholly into Perez Elementary School. If you can go back to that slide real quick. The reason that's important is because any time that we can keep community together, we're going to do it. Right? We don't want to break up Palm Elementary School. We don't want to send the school to multiple schools. We want to keep the school and the community together. This allows us to do that. The other thing I want to point out, and we'll talk about more about this in a little bit, is staffing. I want our community and staff to know that Any transition, any disruption is something that is very centered at our work. I have committed over and over again that those who want to be in Austin ISD will have a home. I've been clear about it. There's been like some messages out there about Matthias is going to do this. That is not true. That is not true at all. So as we move forward, because of what we're talking about in this specific plan, there's actually a lot more flexibility than you might have in other plans. Let's say a school that was going through a turnaround plan or a school that was going through a programmatic move. So we'll have those conversations with staff, but I want our community to know that I recognize that the only reason I exist is to support our educators in the classroom. That's it. Now, this plan, as we'll talk about here, includes this beginning in the next school year, which means that we'll spend the rest of this semester and all of next semester planning, preparing, working between both school communities to develop a healthy, thoughtful transition, and then we'll implement. The board vote will not occur till November 20th, but we were wanting to hear from you all today, have a conversation, and talk about what things we need to consider as we move forward. You want to go through some of the questions? Yep.
Okay, so we have a few of the questions that were submitted in advance that we're going to go through, starting with this one from Ricardo A. This school is a vital part of our community, and shutting it down would disrupt students, break important relationships with teachers, and create longer, more difficult commutes. Has the district explored other options, and can it delay the decision to close schools?
Yeah. So we have looked at lots of options over the last many months, but even years prior as part of the long-range plan. And the reality is that we just don't have the students that live here. And so in order to stabilize the community, we need to create a big enough area to fill up a school and to have all of our resources supporting those students. Could we delay? We could. I am not going to propose that. And here's the reason. We are facing a budget deficit. We are facing transition moves. We're facing accountability risk. All these things cost resources. They do. They really, really do. And so if we're going to do all of it together, the strategy and the approach should be to do it all together at once so that we as a system are taking the steps in unison. Any one of these getting pulled out just means that risk over the next year will increase. Because I will not propose a plan change in the spring semester. Because of what we talked about. If you do something in the spring, it's harder for our staff to be supported. Our families don't get the information they need to prepare for the school year. It creates lots of confusion. We've seen that happen. Mendez and Martin had 6th grade pulled out in 2023. That was done in April. The school district scrambled. Our families scrambled. And we had about a month and a half, 2 months to try to get it together, and it never really worked. Because I have to implement the plan, and I do not want to fail or to do something that is not in alignment with you all's expectations. And so my strategy and my approach is we take a vote together in November. We have time to plan. If there is a delay, it is in an out year. And at that point, all the other things that we're trying to avoid risk-wise would actually grow. So that is why we're not looking at a delay at this point, or at least I am not.
The next question is, multiple commenters brought this one up. So if Palm closes, would Langford continue to reside in its current location in the portables? Or will Langford students continue to attend classes in the portables located at Palm while Palm's building is vacant?
Yeah, so right now this is one of those transition questions that we will refine, but I can tell you that if Palm were to close in the 26-27 school year and the building was vacant, we would look to see if there was an opportunity to reduce the costs of actually keeping Langford in the portable city, right? Because that's also a cost. So anytime we collectively can drive down our costs, I'd like to explore it, and it's always good to have kids in buildings. opposed to portables. So I can't say for certain that it's going to be all of this or all of that as far as in Langford or in Palm or in the portables, but I can say that we would be looking to figure out an interim kind of swing space solution that drives costs down, because it would be, I would think, a disservice to our students in the portables if they're right outside a school building. But again, that will go through, and we'll work through that with the community as part of the transition plan.
The next question was from Renetta A. Have you considered combining Langford and Palm? And then what is the thought process behind Palm being reassigned to Bettis and not Blazier?
Yeah.
And why did the district choose to close Palm instead of changing the boundaries of Blazier and Palm? Those are multiple people
Sorry,
asked that.
Christine. So can you go to the map real quick? So we have looked at Palm into Langford. One of the things that I want our families and staff to know is that Bettis is actually in between, right? So whenever you look at boundaries, you really want to have them continuous. And so, like when you can see right here, this is Bettis, right? Mm-hmm. This is Palm, and this is Langford. So in order to connect the two, we would have to create this really kind of weird shape through the park, or we would have to create a broken attendance boundary, which is not something we would want to do. And it would also include significant, I would say, logistics challenges when it comes to transportation. The preferred approach is always going to be to take two adjacent attendance boundaries and merge them, which is what we're proposing here. We did look at it. I will also say that Langford is full, relatively full, and so we would not be able to relocate all of Palm. And one of the things that we really felt strongly is that we wanted the community to stay together. So that is, I think one of the trade-offs where we could explore that further, but I want our community to know that it's likely to be a really small percent of the existing students at Palm that actually would fit into Langford. And the other question was Blazier. So Blazier's to the south, and what makes these schools challenging is that they're on the edge of AISD's attendance boundary. And Palm is not too far from Blazier. Blazier's just to the south. And so you cannot change the attendance boundary of Blazier because the closest area is actually the area that includes the school. And so we never want to be in a situation where the school is not in the attendance boundary that supports it, right? So see where Blazier is? So Blazier is here. I'm sorry, I'll walk to that one. Blazier is here, right, just to the south. But Blazier goes all the way down to Creedmoor. And so if Palm was to just move over just 6 or 7 streets, it would begin to be inside the attendance boundary. It would begin to consume what is Blazier. And we can't do that, right? The school needs to be in the attendance boundary. So this is a function of just the locations, decisions that were made years and years and years ago. There's not an easy solution because we're bound on the east side with really Del Valley and outside the area. So anything else you want to add to that, Christine?
Yes, thank you. Christine Steenport, Operations Officer for Austin ISD. And I just wanted to add to what you said, Superintendent Segura. When we look at schools and we look at boundaries, we start with where our students live. And we want to make sure that, we're having those neighborhood schools. But when we looked in this cluster of an area, we do this all over with our boundaries and the process, we have about 5,600 seats between about 6 to 7 schools, but we only have 3,900 students. So that's where we start looking at where our schools are situated, as he was just kind of mentioning, and also how much occupancy capacity do we have in that school that's comfortable, and that's what we call a healthy utilization. And so that's kind of where we really started, from that place of looking at our locations where our schools are and looking where our students live, and then looking at how many seats we have available in those areas. So. Oh, yes, and I think that there was a question about Blazier fitting all of Palm. It's just not possible. It's a very, and that area is being developed more, but the projections are still at a high utilization.
Yeah, the Goodnight Ranch development that has thousands of single-family homes, as I know you all are aware of, is just putting all that pressure in that area to increase the. I know you have Allie, any questions? You want to? We can. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, if you have a follow-up, I can bring you the mic.
So I live in the community as well as work here at Palm, and I'm literally 1 block away from Blazier. So the kids in the next blocks go to Blazier, the kids on my street go to Palm. My question is, I've seen y'all rezone the other areas kind of wonky, so I don't understand the justification that we can't send Blazier kids to Palm when, you know, I live on a street a couple of blocks that are Palm. Right next door is Blazier. Why can't we get the kids that are north of Blazier, which is Thaxton Place, plus east of Blazier, which is Bikini Heights, and send them over to Palm? Because Slaughter Lane is still being developed with homes and neighborhoods. So in 5 years, you're gonna have Blazier that's already full. It's gonna be busting at the seams. And what are you gonna do then in 5 years? You're gonna make another school?
So we looked at that. The challenge is how many schools. So remember, the school as a whole is less than 50% filled, right? So the question becomes, how would that even come close to filling up the students? Would it come close to actually getting us to where we would have a healthy, stable utilization? My understanding, and based when I was going through the work, you'd have to go pretty far into Blazier's attendance boundary to make up the difference. I know I'm very familiar with this area. I'm trying to think through which streets. I can't speak offhand. I can provide that data. But when we looked at it, it was a pretty significant number because a lot of that area, especially to the north of Blazier, as y'all know, you have the park area. It's a big area, but there's lots of park space, open space there too. So you have to go pretty far down into that area before you get to pick up enough students that would fill up. So if it's a couple streets, perhaps that's dozens, but I don't know that it's hundreds and hundreds, which is really what we need to be thinking about to actually fill up Palm. But we're happy to look at that and to provide more feedback, but that's the approach that we took and why.
And I also wanted to touch to a little bit of your comment earlier about projections. We are looking at 10 years projections with birth rate, census data, developers, all of that with the city. And so this is projected 10 years out. We always like to really hone in on 5, but this has projections as well. And if you look at the bottom of that boundary map, you'll see those projections specifically for 2029, which gives us a good average after maybe there's some grandfathering policies that students are able to do to kind of give you that showcase of what it would look like and how that school could be utilized.
I'm going to go back and forth between, because I want to make sure we get to the questions that were pre-submitted. Is this kind of related to, is your question related to this? Yeah, well, I hope it's related to Blazier. I'm in the wrong meeting.
So no one is arguing that Palm is not close to Bettis. What we're saying is, you're saying that we can't pull some of those kids because it would be pulling some of the kids that are in that attendance boundary, correct? From Blazier. You said we can't pull kids from Blazier because then we're going into Blazier's, the kids are close to, right?
Well, you don't want to have the Palm boundary go so far south that it's actually around Blazier proper.
But what you do want is for the parents here to pass Palm to go to Bettis. And we don't see how that's fair. You see what I'm saying? You're telling, like, and when you think about it, like Langford might come into this building because you could imagine them being over there with this vacant building. But then you want parents who live right here to pass this school where Langford might be in next year, for them to drive past their, what was originally their home school, to go to Bettis now, when we could just get some of those those Blazier kids to come here. But because no one, for some reason, doesn't want to mess with Blazier because of the numbers, the set boundaries, whatever it is.
I have no, that's not true. We will look at all solutions and refine. It was never about not wanting to do something. It's just what large enough area actually creates a healthy student population for the next 10 years that would support us.
And to us, I mean, as a community here, we've all talked about it, is bringing us some of Blazier, because Blazier has exploded. That's why you built that other school. And meanwhile, we were just dwindling down, especially when we had the flood that took all those houses and took those families. So if we would have gotten some of those families in the beginning, if those boundaries would have been changed a long time ago, we wouldn't be in this situation. And there's no reason why we can't get those kids to come here. It's easier for those Blazier kids to come down the street for than for these Bettis, I mean, these Palm parents to go all the way to Bettis. Most of our parents walk. Okay, so I mean that I don't understand. And when I sit here and hear you say, "Oh, these are closed," we understand that. That's not hard for anyone here to understand. What we don't understand is why you can't get Blazer kids to come here.
Correct. Yeah. So I mean, so we're happy to continue to refine. I mean, I think the one question that I just want to be really clear about is how many students we actually need to pull in order to make that work. And because that's the question, right? Because a couple streets, in my experience, doesn't solve the problem, right? It is a huge area that typically is needed to, and it's not just who lives there, it's how many actually go to that school. So we look at live-in, we look at projections, but and so we could look at that. We have the analysis. I'm not prepared to share kind of how far down you have to go. And as far as wonky boundaries, I'm not sure I think that was you, ma'am. Like we're trying to get away from that. That's one of the things, that's why we're in some of these messes that we're in now, because for the last 144 years, a road would get expanded or this school would get added, and then we would create this little boundary and we'd want to protect this thing. And so that's kind of how we got to where we are. I do not want to just do what others have done if it doesn't make sense for our community. Now, if we say here, okay, if Langford had a room, right? Let's say they had a room and we could make it work. You would see me wanting to figure out a way to make it work. That's what I'm trying to hear from you all is, Matthias, we understand the environment we're in. It sounds like there's consensus around that. I am trying to figure out how I can make an adjustment work to support community need, acknowledge the pain that we're in and the stress that we're in, and we're happy to look at that. I mean, we are happy to look at that.
Yeah.
I just don't want to set the expectation that we can all of a sudden just go down Blazer a couple streets and then it's going to solve the problem. That may not be the case. And so that's maybe my counter position.
And I appreciate your comment about the boundaries, because we've heard that from other schools. Nobody changes the boundary. There's no regular review process. The city of Austin has changed drastically. But then we build a new school, but we don't look at the boundaries and try to balance that way. And so I think this is our first approach, right? We don't want to get in this situation that we've been in for years, honestly, decades. We want to have a regular review boundary process to where we're doing this every 2 to 3 years. That's what other districts do near us. I mean, Liberty Hill, they're growing, and Leander, and they have usually something every year just because they're expanding so much. But we have to do the same thing so we don't get into the same problem that we have now. So I appreciate your comment.
I'm going to take the next question from the comment card, and then I saw you had your hand up, so I'll go to you after that. So the next question was, traffic on William Cannon is a concern. Can you explain if transportation will be provided for students who are rezoned?
So our transportation policy would be the same. So if you live more than 2 miles from the school where you are zoned to attend, then you would have transportation. Or if the route is deemed hazardous, that if it's walkable or bikeable, we would also provide a bus for that student.
Okay, sorry, I'm gonna ask a question for a parent. So what is the answer to that?
So yes, you will get a bus. You will
Okay.
get a bus.
So I'm a transfer mother from Kyle. How would that work for our kids? I know a lot of our kids don't belong to Austin, but we did the proper transfer. How would that work for them?
So that's one of the things that we're addressing as part of this update in our plan, to be really, really clear, because we want our families who've transferred into the school, if they choose to go with the school, they can go with the school. And so that's one of the things that wasn't clear in the initial draft, and honestly, it wasn't clear because there were just so many scenarios that we had to work through to make sure we addressed it correctly. So in the new version, we're going to have a whole document that's set aside for transfer policies and standard operating procedures. And what you're going to see in that is students who transfer into a school will be kept by way of the superintendent and board adoption of the policy with the cohort of the school. So if your student goes to Palm now and the entire cohort of students goes to Bettis, you would have the ability to go to Bettis, transfer automatically approved. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So that's what we're doing to try to limit any of these kind of, these things that are not consistent with our values. We want that for you. We want that.
Okay, and my next question is, reiterate again, if I'm gonna say it and correct me if I'm wrong. Why can't we combine Langford and Palm?
So, I'm sorry?
Okay, it wouldn't fit. Okay.
So, well, yeah, Palm going to, when you say combined, I was trying to figure out, are you talking about here or there? Because Palm cannot fit in Langford being rebuilt.
Because because Langford has the amount of students they have, right? Correct.
Yeah.
But Pettis has the same amount of students, and you're fitting our kids over. It's going to be the same amount of students. So help me understand
So
that.
each school has a different capacity. So not all schools have the same size, fit the same number of students. And just look at this school and Blazier, right? They're very, very different. Blazier is much larger. So when we think about what it takes to fill up, we think about, well, how many students are there now? And then how many students can fit safely and support the academic programming? And what we know is that Bettis has space when you think about it from that perspective. I don't recall like the capacity of each school, but every school does have a different capacity.
Okay. I have another question, but I will ask. That way you can move on.
Okay. Yeah, and I'll be here.
Well, I also want to know, like, I feel like our teachers are overflowing with students. I remember there used to be a less amount of students. Our teachers have like over 20 students in their class sometimes. I just want to know how this is going to benefit our kids. You keep talking about budget and budget and budget. It's going to benefit you guys, but how is it going to benefit our kids?
So when you say, so the one thing I will say is, by state requirements, right, it's 22 students is the maximum we can have for in an elementary classroom. So 22.
Okay, some of the teachers last year had more than 22.
No, I'm giving you. I want to give you like kind of context because you said a comment around budget concerns us. Like one of the things you run into is we don't have educators in our classrooms the way we need to have them. We have vacancies, right? We have to provide the resources for your students, the curriculum, instructional coaches, content interventionists, all those things to make sure that your student is on grade level and getting what they need in alignment with our values. So I guess the word I'm saying is budget is a huge part of this, but it's not the reason we make decisions. Everything is in service to the classroom. That's the reason we exist. But if I don't have the funds to actually support our educators and your students, then everybody, all of our students, all of our schools are not going to be successful. That's just the honest truth. And right now, I mean, the federal government made changes. We lost $11 million overnight, right? That's huge. The cost of education has gone up. We're running about we cut $100 million in the last 2 years in our budget, and we're trying to find more funds wherever we can and trying to stay away from the classroom. We have decided to protect certain things. We've decided to keep librarians in our schools, right? That's something that's above and beyond what the state has. We've decided to have nurses. That's something above and beyond what the state requires. We've decided to be able to procure our own curriculum. We could have a different curriculum and save $6 to $8 million, but I promise you that curriculum is not going to align with our values. And so I just want to be really clear, like everything is tied to resources. It's not that I am thinking about it only from a finance perspective, but the reality of it all is if we cannot have a healthy fund balance, if we cannot pay our educators, the risk from the agency and for our ability to support support our students is real. So that's how they're connected. So I just want you to know it's all.
The next question is
Yeah.
actually really connected to this, so you might want to stay on that
Yeah.
track. But it says, how will closing 13 schools impact enrollment and overall resources for the district?
Yeah, so one of the things that we hear from time to time is if you go through a school consolidation process, you're going to lose students, right? One of the other things that I've seen is that we have schools right now who've historically been underserved, and they're not the choice for many of the students in the neighborhood. So you can think about where that is. Where do we have areas in Austin where there are lots of students, but they're not selecting our schools? Well, why is that? A lot of it comes down to because there are families that feel as though the charter school or the school next door is the better option, or the school across town. So I want to desperately get to a place where all of our schools are high performing, right? Not only how we see it, but our state sees it, but we actually have the resources to do it. And I can't do that with 116 schools and a budget that has been going in the wrong direction. And the other thing that puts additional pressure on it is enrollment. I mean, our enrollment has declined in the last many years, and it's not that our proportion of all the students has changed, it's that there are families who cannot afford to live in Austin. They can't. And so they're moving out. And we've seen that over the last 10 years, and that is directly how we get funding from the state. So all these things have gotten us to a point where we have to think about, okay, if we're going to do something well and have strong neighborhood schools, we have to acknowledge that we may have to have fewer of them to do it well. That's just the honest truth.
Thanks, Matthias. We have a question right here.
Yeah.
Yeah, I want to get back to the transportation talk.
Yeah.
So we live within walking distance. All of our children come here. There's several families in the community here at Palm who have disabilities, who utilize special transit services. So we've checked, and there is no school bus for our students to get to Paredes. And I am at work at 5 a.m. My wife works on the other end of Austin. So we would have to be dropping our students off at like 6:30 in the morning, just so my wife can get to work on time. Or I would totally have to find another job or means of work to accommodate dropping them off. What is the resolution for that?
Yeah, so the first thing I would say is there wouldn't be a bus just yet because this plan hasn't, like they're not connected yet. So our transportation system would not have created a bus route until they merge together and become one attendance boundary. As Christine said, if you're over 2 miles, you will automatically get a bus. And if there's any hazardous route, and William Cannon, I would argue, is a hazardous route. So anything beyond, right? I live on William Cannon. I grew up off William Cannon. I know it well. So that will address itself. We can be clear, and in the policy changes, in the plan, kind of show you what it will look like. We didn't clearly articulate it in the first draft because it's part of our policy already, so we couldn't show it in that way. But we will. We'll make it very, very clear. The other thing is, this is what is helpful. If we understand that this community needs a different level of support early in the morning at any of the receiving schools, like we, the district, with board support, can make those changes. We have families all across the city that, we have 20,000 students that use our buses. We have some schools that open up really, really early with programming, where they have partners in place. We have students that come and just rest in the morning because their families are working 2 and 3 jobs. Like, we understand that. But I need to know, like, what needs to change in the combined or the new school to support you. That is what this is going to be about once we get past these votes, is transition planning, transitions planning. The last thing I want is for any one of our families to feel like they have to do something different to support their student. Like, that's our job. I have to change. So that's how we're going to tackle it. And one of the documents that you're going to see in our next upload this Friday is our framework for transition. So you'll see all the things that we're considering as we go through this work. How do you bring PTAs together? How do you, what's the approach that we're going to use to honor the legacy of the school that's being vacated? All of those things will be in there. And also programming. If there's programming that's not there now that needs to be there, we will address it. The last thing is special education. Transportation. We provide transportation for any student that receives special education services, period. Right, that's a period. So if that were the case, you can feel confident that we would provide that transportation. It is a separate system. It's not tied to board policy. It's actually tied to state and federal policy, so that would not be a concern. We would get that one taken care of, if that was a question.
And the next question that was pre-submitted, actually this came up with multiple commenters, is about special education. And I might call Krista up here to help out with this one. But it says, our students receiving special education services are excelling and seeing improvement here at Palm. What considerations are being given for students receiving special education services through this transition? What happened?
Thank you. Hi, my name is Krista Etheridge. I'm the Interim Executive Director of Special Ed. And we certainly want to continue to see our students to improve and excel. Good news is that Bettis offers a very robust special education program. They offer a full continuum of supports and services, so we're not anticipating that there will be any disruption to services, and that will continue to flow as it is now.
Yeah, the one thing I would say is in the plan that you'll see on this Friday, we also have a separate document that is specifically to students receiving special education services and what our students can expect as we transition. When the ARD would take place, if there's not a service at that school. In some cases, maybe there's life skills at the school that the student is at, but not at the receiving school. Like, what's our plan there? So we're going to be very, very intentional. We're thinking through all the different elements. But the support for special education and the resources allocated come out of special education department. They do not come out of talent and strategy, because we place based on need, not based on the number of students, if that makes any sense. So that's why it's kind of important that we talk about both of them a little bit separately when it comes to staffing. But that's how we're going to tackle it. There'll be more detail on the plan.
So I want to go back to Langford. I was passing by, and Langford is just a hole in the ground. There's no building right now. And you were saying that Langford and Palm together here wouldn't have capacity, but before the floods, Langford has like, I think 450 kids. We have like 300 and something. Together, they could fit here. We used to have more than that before the floods took our students away. So I don't understand like why that wouldn't work. There's no school there. You get rid of the portables, you keep this school, put some resources into it, sell that property over there, and we have a robust school here. And the parents are still in their community, right?
So we'd be doing the opposite to Langford, right?
But they're already here.
So, yeah, well, it's actually not quite that long. But one of the things I would say is bond allocations, the projects, like all of those things, modernized facilities. That is something the district and we're committed to progressing. I'm certainly happy to add more detail as to kind of how that plays into it. I don't want to kind of just say that we would do that without kind of more intentional. Yeah, so the way that the bond dollars work, and I want to be really, really clear, bond dollars can be reauthorized by board vote, right? So if there are projects that are tied to Palm Elementary School, there are a couple things that can be done. First is we determine what hasn't been spent, right? Because I will tell everybody, if our students are in a building, we want to make sure that water's running and that AC is cooling. Like, that's important. I've had people tell me, Matthias, how could you approve the 2022 bond program if you knew this was going to happen? We didn't know. In 23, we thought the state would offer support. In 2025, they did, but only minimally. And throughout this entire time, we want our kids to feel safe, supported, and have the buildings operating, and our staff as well. So what we do is take the remaining amount and say, okay, how much is left? We would work with our Community Bond Oversight Committee with a framework and say, our preference is for the dollars to follow the students. That's always going to be our preference. If the students are going to Bettis, then we would have to understand, well, what is happening at Bettis with their money, and can this supplement, can it be added, does it be something different? In some cases, not in this case necessarily, but in some cases, the school that is receiving is a modernized facility, so you wouldn't need to spend any money. Well, then the question becomes, can you move it to the middle school, where the students will be in a couple years? Or you can move it to the high school. Like, we really want to make sure that the money stays in the vertical, in the feeder, so that our students experience that investment in their academic journey. That's how we would tackle it. It's a function of the board. The board takes the vote. I would just give a recommendation, but that's how it would occur.
The next question we have online is from Tonya V.
Is this the last one? And then
That's
we'll-
actually who's raising their hand right now, so I'll go ahead. Do you want me to just ask your question?
Hi, I'm Tonya Vasquez, and I have a 5th grade grader at Palm. And so I'm glad that question came up, because it's kind of alongside the other question that I have. But according to your rubric, we were graded a 3. So just seeing that 3, how did we get bumped into a school that's going to be closed? And let's say the school is closed, what happens after that? Will you sell Palm? And if you do, how much will the district get?
Yeah, so the rubric, as I communicated throughout the process, was never going to be a school closure list. It never was. The top 10, we said that over and over again. What it was meant to communicate is where we had misalignments in our system, where we had over-enrollment, under-enrollment. There are schools on that list that are consolidating, but there are also many others that aren't, because you have to think about the impact of all the schools around it. So that's why there wasn't a bumping. It wasn't like that was the list and somehow Palm got bumped. It was looking region by region in our school system, understanding the kind of overall goals of the plan, what made sense based on the fact that we have lots of empty seats in this part of Austin, and we have to make a decision. Regarding real estate, At no point along this journey did we ever, make a conscious decision and say, oh, we're going to close this school because the land is more valuable or less value. That wasn't part of this process. What we do is we go through a process and we identify what is community benefit. Our trustees in 2019 voted on an agenda item that said housing teacher housing is a community benefit, community space is a benefit, and other things. And so what we're going to do is to bring that full circle, kind of reintroduce it to the board and say this is the process that we're likely to go through. It's not going to happen without all of y'all's input. Like, we're not going to go and do something without getting input from our community. I will say it has to be balanced, because there have been some communities that say, well, I just want it to be an open park, like totally open. Well, I mean, that's fine, but there are also kind of the real kind of opportunities that exist if we could do like a capitalized ground lease and do housing, right? Bring families back into the area. That would be a benefit. So we're going to go through a process. I always take the lead from our community. Sometimes the community wants to go quicker, and sometimes the community wants to go slower. When we closed Pease Elementary School, the community said, we want to ensure that students are in the building. So we worked with United Way, we did a contract, now it's an early childhood center. For Anita Coy, the conversation was around housing. So what do? We worked with our Public Facilities Corporation, which is tied to our board, and now we have over 600 units being constructed, like as we speak. So we have the ability to do it together, but I'm going to take y'all's lead. But at no point did value or what it could or couldn't be came up in the decision-making process.
I'm going to go ahead and read the question that you had, Ms. Vasquez, also, just because I think it's an important one. But the question was, will the school board consider pausing the closure of Palm Elementary to allow the community time to collaborate and explore solutions that could increase enrollment and better serve our students? And so I know that our superintendent has kind of shared his position on the reasons why we don't feel it is in the best interest to slow down. But I also just want to make sure that everyone kind of understands the way this plan works is that the administration makes a recommendation, which is we have this draft plan. There's going to be a revised version of it Friday. We present that to the board, and then the board has to make a determination. They might ask us to make some other adjustments. They might ask us to continue listening or refine in other areas. So this really is a question for our board, but I think Matias has kind of described where we stand in terms of kind of the why about why we feel that we need to act with a little bit of urgency. Did you want to add anything to that?
No, I would just say we can spend lots of resources trying to increase enrollment, but if the kids do not live in the attendance boundary, you're going to spend lots of time and energy, and we will see we won't see the gains that we would hope to see. We have this in other parts of the city. I've been working on this for quite some time. We really need to think about how do we support the whole school district. And so I would tell our board that, if you slow it down, then you're going to wait 1 more year or 2 more years and then potentially be back here in a couple of years. I would argue that the great work that's been happening here, the things that y'all have been doing, have attracted families, but we're still less than 50% full, right? Because the families just don't live here. And a lot of it had to do with the flood in 2013, I understand that, but that is outside of our control. I have no control over that. So I'm trying to do the best that we can with the limited opportunities that we have in front of us, with the real risk of the state kind of above us.
We have a question here in Spanish.
Buenas tardes, gracias por venir aquí a compartir con nosotros.
De nada.
Mi nombre es Leticia Castañón. Según los borradores he visto que además de PALP también piensa o están planeando cerrar a Widen. Es una escuela que está muy cerca de aquí, de nosotros.
Widen, closing.
According to your drafts, we realized that you're going to be closing Widen. That's a school that's real near to us.
Entiendo que una de las razones por la cual quieren cerrar nuestra escuela es porque tenemos pocos estudiantes. ¿Ha considerado mover los estudiantes de Widen para PALM? ¿Sería una opción?
And we understand that one of the reasons you want to close down Palm is because of the lack of students. Have you considered having some students from Widen move to Palm?
Yeah, so we haven't looked at moving large numbers of students from Widen to Palm because of the boundary kind of issue that I talked about, like having schools cross schools. But we can look at that. What I will say, just to be clear, Widen is in a different situation. Widen Elementary School has multiple years, 3 in fact, of not making accountability. And what I mean by not making accountability, there's a series of D's or F's that now have required us, AISD, to develop a plan that the state has to approve. And so to do that, there are certain things that have to be true. Where the students go to has to be a higher performing school, and certainly Palm would qualify. 2, the systems in place at the school have to meet the plan. And what that may include is certain teachers being required to have certain number of years of experience. It could mean very kind of clearly articulated and defined processes throughout the school year. So it's going to be much tighter. And what we have to do is wherever the majority of Wadane students go is where that turnaround plan exists. Right now, Wadane is going to go to the north to Houston, which is being modernized, and to the south to Rodriguez. So we've thought through that. Again, not all of them are the same, but that is why Wadane is structured that way. Now, I'm happy to look and see if there's an opportunity, but I don't know that we could make it to where all the students, because of what I just described. But I'm happy to, that's a response that we can certainly provide.
Okay, I have a question back here, and then I called on this woman there, and then I'll get up to the front again.
Hi, my name is Ann Mason. I'm the art teacher here at Palm. I've been here for 25 years, and I noticed that nobody's addressed the flood issue. Onion Creek is going to flood again because of all the construction in Kyle, Buda, and Easton Park area. What are you going to do if all of our students are at Bettas and our parents here can't get across Onion Creek to get their kids when it floods again? That was an issue in 2015. We couldn't even bus our kids out of Palm to get away from the creek. So that is going to happen again. What are we going to do?
Yeah, so I'm very familiar with the flooding in 2013, 2015, kind of the sequence of events that occurred at that time. And that's a valid concern. I'm sorry, that's a valid concern. So for us, when we think about transition planning, because if Palm goes to a different location, now it'd still be true of Bettas, right? Families still want to get to their students at Bettas. So to us, it's bigger than just any one school. It's how do we as a school district support our families in an emergency response situation where Onion Creek is rising at a very quick rate, which it did in 2015, 2013. And so we went through that before. We have plans in place. I don't have them. I can't speak to them at the moment. It's been a little kind of while since I revisited them. But as part of the transition planning, that we would do together, that's one of the things that I would make sure is clearly articulated, communicated, and shared with our families. And so that's the honest truth. That's exactly what we would do.
Next back here.
No, because sure, no. So so what I would say is we can't make the plan unless we make the plan with you all together. That's the honest truth. I'm not going to give you something that you haven't had a chance to weigh in on, like your lived experiences, to help me understand what this community needs in order to be responsive. And the honest truth is we haven't taken a vote. Like, there are lots of communities that want to plan and we want to do things together, but we haven't gotten to a point where we can just go. Because of just where we are in the process. What I can say is, based on kind of all the adjustments and all the things that have occurred within the Onion Creek watershed, which I'm very familiar with again as well, I I want to acknowledge the kind of the trauma that occurred in that space, in that moment, and do everything we can to communicate our response plan. But there's nothing that I'm going to say that's going to get anybody to think that it couldn't happen again, right? And so I want to be really clear, like I think what this community is looking for is, if this happens again, AISD, what are you going to do, right? Or how are you going to respond, and how is it going to be different than what occurred in 2013, 2015, before many of us are here? I cannot, and I will never say that I can guarantee that it's not going to flood again. That's not possible. But that's the reason why. So no, we won't. I can add more detail to it. I can provide a response to the questions. But as far as the detailed plan of how it's going to work with this community accessing betas, I don't want to set an expectation that it'll be fully fleshed out and final before the 21st vote. What I would expect to have happen is, this is the element of the plan that's going to be considered. This is the timeline that we're going to work with community to deliver it. This is how it's going to be submitted to the superintendent and the board for approval. But all of that work requires you all at the table, and right now we're not even close to a vote. So that's how it would work. And so I apologize, but that's the way it'll show up later. But it'll be done in the spring semester, or shortly after it would be done well before the school year starts.
Okay, I'm going to ask folks that we go in order, that because we've had people that have been waiting patiently, and then I'll come back up to y'all, okay?
Okay.
Hi, I'm Karen. Hi, I'm Karen Hunt, and I've been here for 35 years, and we were here when there was 1,000, and we had 12 portables. The portable's already there, so you can just bring everybody over. Anyway, is Langford going to be built?
Yes.
When do you propose that that's going to be built?
You mean
Because originally it was supposed to be built, it was going to be 2.5 years. And since they haven't started, when do you propose that it'll be built?
They've started.
They have?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
We've been by there, and there doesn't look like there's a whole lot going on.
So,
but,
so
okay.
when you say started, so a hole in the ground, I mean, so just to understand how, I mean, there's a lot that occurs before
Okay.
you start to see structural steel go
Okay.
up. So they have started. They are moving through the process. I don't want anybody to think, it's an active construction site.
Okay, but my other question, you were talking about keeping the community together and keeping all Palm together and moving to Perez. Then why are some kids at Perez then going to be separated, and some going to Langford and some going to Houston, that their community will not be held together?
Thank you for that question. And you can see, if you look at Langford's boundary as well, it's what we've been calling feathering, but it's to shift up and balance our enrollment in our schools to where it's more utilized in a right way. You'll see some small feathering or shifts up within their boundary as well. It's very small, but you'll see that on the map.
Yeah, so when we talk about communities going together, if there's a big disruption, and I would argue a school closure is a big disruption, I'm going to do whatever I can to keep the school together, right? The feathering that Christine's talking about, or the adjustments boundary by boundary across the entire city, there's hundreds and hundreds of those occurring, like minor adjustments. I don't want, we can't keep every community together, or else we would never have a boundary change, right? That's just the honest truth. So that's why you're going to see some adjustments like that. We are making refinements in the last 2.5 weeks, or 3 weeks since we've released the draft. We've been making lots of changes, making adjustments to acknowledge that, hey, we probably didn't have to do it quite that way. You know, we can probably fit them in, even though it doesn't quite meet our goal, and that's okay. And we're making those changes. If we hear from the Bettis community that that's something that is a concern or a strain, we will make the adjustment if it doesn't create another change downstream, like adding a split at a middle school or adding a split at a high school, which does happen. If every one of these changes has an impact downstream. So that's why.
We have a question back here.
Yeah, so I'm actually hit on two fronts with this one. I have a child that goes to Palm, and then my son goes to Bedichek. So they're both getting closed, right? That's your proposed plan. You spoke on alignment earlier. And so my question is this: if you drive, and nobody wants to move here, if you drive 3 minutes down the road down Thaxton, there's brand new houses and apartments popping up all over the place. So why isn't the realignment done with Blazer, who's probably overpopulated since they have an intermediate school already, done to adjust what enrollment would be happening here at Palm? And you grew up on William Cannon, so the South 78745 and 44 would be familiar to you, yet historical schools like Palm and Bedichek are your choice to close?
So the first thing I would say is I don't take closures lightly by any means. And we had a conversation here about boundary changes from Palm to Blazer and some of the challenges we have just because of where Blazer is. it is so far north in its attendance boundary, and Palm is so far south in its attendance boundary, where to capture the number of students that we would need, you quickly get into a space where Palm's boundary would actually include Blazier Elementary School. Now, again, I'm going to go look at it and see what opportunity exists, but we're 50% full here, so you'd have to pick up hundreds and hundreds of kids to get back to a balanced, school that can be supported for years to come. So we're going to look at that. And we have looked at it, but I will commit to looking at it again. As far as Bedichek goes, I know Bedichek well. This is one of those ones that's really, really tough because there's an excess of middle school seats in South Austin between Covington, Mendez, Paredes, O'Henry, Lively, and Bedichek. Bedichek also, just right, wrong, or indifferent from the state's perspective, has 3 Fs. They have an accountability, historically they have accountability chain that has to be broken. If we do not break that accountability chain, there is real state intervention risk, meaning the state comes in, right? You know what that means. They take over the board. It's that level of thing. It's happening right now in Fort Worth. I'm not going to let that happen. We are committed to having a presence and re-envisioning what Bedichek is. Bedichek's been around for a long time. It's an important part of that community. I recognize that in the plan we talk about restarting Bedichek. But I can't do that without some type of change because right now the pressure is just you have too many seats and you have the accountability risk. And so I'm really sorry that that's happening. It's never my intention to impact a family and to this degree. I know it's happening. We're trying to figure out what we can do to support that transition. We know most of the students are going to go to Covington, some will go to Paredes, and some will go to Lively. Go ahead. So that's one of the things that we look at is where are they, where are they headed, and then what changes have occurred to date, right? And what I will tell you is the state of Texas has to accept our plans. As you probably know that we went through a change at Paredes recently. This school year is different than last school year. And so the turnaround plan and given its proximity, so Paredes is kind of similar to the way Palm is, where it's on the southeast corner of the school district. So there's nothing to the east, which means that you'd have to make all those students only go in one direction. The reason Bedichek, because we looked at that, the reason Bedichek does work is because I can have multiple schools absorb the number of students. If you go the other way, then you only have Mendez to the north and Bedichek to the west, and it doesn't work. Like it's too much. And so the only reason that Bedichek is the school is because it happens to be surrounded by other schools that have capacity. So you have to, like that, all of this comes into play. I know it's not the answer you wanted to hear, but that's the honest truth, right? If I go the other way, it doesn't work the same. It doesn't work.
Next, we have a person right here. Was there anyone else? If you want to raise your hand, I can call on you next.
Hi, I'm Judy. My baby's in the 5th grade. I just want to know, have you counted how many kids you're going to lose by closing this? Like mine is in the 5th grade. Half of his kids' class is not even going to a public school. We're all going to a charter school. They have siblings. They are going to go to that charter school because they don't want to go to Perez. Have y'all thought about that?
So we've thought about a lot of these things, that as well. The question becomes, so is doing nothing, like we've been working, like y'all been doing great work here. I mean, y'all been doing great work, so why are we not there from an overall utilization perspective? So I don't want to sit here and say that if we put all the resources and everything in place, that it's somehow going to grow when we haven't seen that, and there aren't students that live here. So let me. I just want to talk about that point because I want to get to a point where all of our schools have the resources needed to support their students. Period. Whether you're at Pecan Springs, if you're at Blackshear, wherever you are. And right now, my position is, if we have those resources and we have incredible teachers and the student and the culture and climate continue to move in the direction that they have, we will attract students back. I always want families to do what's best for their students. I do believe that Austin ISD is the best option, but I also understand that there's going to be transitions and families are going to make a different decision. I hope not to make them, but I can't quantify what that is. I can't say that it's this percent or this percent. What I can tell you is that other school districts have gone through consolidations in the state of Texas, and they've seen fairly minimal changes in enrollment. Again, because I've heard someone say, well, everybody's going to go. Well, I don't know how to respond to that.
Why does it take y'all, if a school is an F, why does it take y'all 3 years before y'all do something about it?
So when you say y'all, you're talking about the AISD, right? So what I would first say is, disruption matters. It has a huge impact on this system. Now, you talk about 3Fs being 23, 24, and 25. Well, the 23 accountability, so this version of the administration and the board came together in the end of that year, right? And so you think about, what have we done? We've done a lot. We went from about 72% teacher retention rate to 88%. We had 92%, 88% staffing rates. Now we're at 97.5%. The first year I came in, we hired over 20 principals. Now we hired 5. And so when you went through superintendent after superintendent after superintendent, and then that turned over the executive team, that turned over the principals, that turned over the teachers, you're going to have that type of impact. So I agree with you. We should have done more earlier. There's no doubt. But I don't want anybody to leave here thinking that we haven't moved the system in the last 2.5 years, right? We have instructional coaches where we didn't have them before. We have content interventions that are coming into the system now. We have an aligned curriculum for the first time. Instead of having 15 different curriculum and then having students with high mobility rates go to one school and have one experience, go to another school, have a different experience, we don't have that. That hurts our black and brown kids, right? It just does. And so where we are now we're seeing improvements in early literacy, early numeracy. We've seen every metric that we measure moving in the right direction. So yes, I wish we would have, decisions before me I can't speak to. We need to own the moment, make difficult decisions, support our babies, and move forward together. I promise you I will be responsive. I promise you I will do what's required, no matter how hard it is. This is hard. But I can't speak to why something did or didn't happen years ago. What I can tell you is we were not set up for that type of success, but I think we are now moving forward.
Okay, I see a few people who've spoken already. Is there anyone, if you could raise your hand if you haven't gotten a chance to speak and you would like to? Did you have your hand up?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Anyone else that hasn't spoken? Just going to give one more call. Okay, then I'll come back to you, and I know that you said you wanted to speak, and then back to you.
So, I'm just going to be hard-headed. It's hard. I'm not getting the answer that I want about Blazer besides getting into Blazer, being back, Blazer being part of taking some of their kids. I don't, you say they're a good school. We know they're a good school. Everybody knows they're a good school. Those parents know they're a good school.
I think all of our,
I know. We know our school's good. I don't have to say that. But what I'm saying is, I wish you would go over there and fight for us. To say, we're going to have to cut your boundary. It's going to back up to, you'll probably be right here, but you're going to go to Palm, and Palm's a great school. And because you're talking about disruption and bringing down disruption, but if you could give us some of those kids, give us 400 kids, we'll take them. If you gave us those kids to come over here, then we don't have to go to Pettis, and Pettis doesn't have to split up. Keep Pettis where they are, because right now, you're moving some kids to Houston from Pettis, right?
No.
No?
So Wadane is going to Houston and Rodriguez.
Oh,
That's
okay.
what I think you heard.
So then they could stay there, so no one has to, they don't have to move around, and it would leave less disruption. I don't understand why is it such a big deal to cut them. How many kids do they have at Blazer? They have over 1,200 kids. Why can't they just someone go in there? Why can't you go in there and say, look, as a community, like you're telling us here, as a community, we're making this plan. Nobody in this community, I think, asked for Palm to be closed and go to Bettis. So that was not a community decision. But why can't you go over there and say, this is going to make sense? We are teaching exactly what they are teaching over there. We don't have 3 years of Fs over here. Bring some of those kids over here so that we could stay here in this area. It just seems so simple to go on to say other things of, this is what we need to do, this is the best. You haven't, I feel like you're just selling it. You haven't even said, this is what could happen at the end. But we know, you have to make it clear. The salesman talk of, this is gonna be good. We've sat down and we've thought about this, we thought about that. But have you talked to us really? Those questions, we put in a lot of questions, and there was like 7 that came up. Give us the answer. Tell us really, is it going to be the end of the world if we go into Blazer's neighborhood? Is it going to be the end of the world? Is it going to be hard for those parents just to come over here, to drive, 3 more minutes, than for parents who like our parent over here who lives right around the street, down the street, and walks every day, that won't be able to do that with his child anymore? How is that okay for us, and not okay for them?
Yeah. Well, I'm not trying to be a salesman. I'm trying to communicate the urgency around us doing something so that we're not here talking about why we have these pressures a year from now, 2 years from now, 3 years from now. To me, I want to really communicate, these are real risks that we're managing, budget risks, keeping staff. And so it's not that I'm trying to sell, I'm just trying to communicate the urgency around this. We have to do something differently than what we've been doing for the last many decades. I have no problem. I will make hard decisions. I will go in, I will assess, I will look at opportunities, and I will talk to the communities, and I will be straight up with them about what I think is best. I will tell you that when it comes to some of the things that we identified as kind of goals or maybe strategies that we wanted to explore as part of this, that creates challenges when you get to kind of these really, really tight spots, right? So I have no problem going and looking at that again. I just be really honest about what that may introduce. One of the things we talk about is splitting vertical teams. I know that Blazier is assigned to Paredes. These schools over here are assigned to different middle schools. So we have to recognize, what does that look like? How does a high school feeder get split? These are the things that we talked about in aligning feeder patterns. If it's going to create a conflict there, I got to talk to our trustees, talk to the community, hey, this is something we could do, but all these other things are going to be not compromised, but they're kind of in exchange for it. And so that's just that's the honest truth. I have no problem. We were going to look at it. I will assess again. The other thing that we run into is total number of seats in an area. So let's say that we go ahead and pull students from Blazier. We're still going to have the same number of seats over the total number of available seats in the area, right? Because we didn't take anything out. We just moved them around. And so someone mentioned pre-K not being there. Yeah, so Uphouse has the pre-K students that go to Blazier, and they made those decisions years ago. So, if we did something different and then pre-K moved back in, then does Uphouse close? So those are the things that I want to be really honest about that I have to make sure we tackle. No, we did explore it. I am committed to going back. I will have a difficult conversation. I know that community. I will do what's required to support the whole. There's no doubt. I want you to know, So one of the things that Dripping does is they created a process where they reevaluate every couple years. We don't do that. We're going to do that because I don't want to be here in 5 years, 6 years. This is too painful. It's brutal, right? When communities get set in their boundaries because they feel like they're never going to change, and we have to set the expectation. Families move, developments grow, floods happen, right? You have to expect that every so many years we're going to revisit it. That expectation I want to set as long as I'm here. I'm going to do it. But I'm happy to have that conversation. But that's why Dripping Springs is able to do it, because they've set the expectation with the community. And most of the schools are newer. We are an old school district. We're 144 years old. Dripping Springs I think is barely 80, barely 70. So all the things, we're it's in our bones that we're trying to address. So that's newer school districts tend to have that process and procedure already in place. Old, mature school districts don't do it so great.
Okay, so we have about 7 minutes left, and we do have a hard stop because we have a community meeting after this, a virtual one actually. But I know that I called on you, you in the black shirt, and then this gentleman had his hand up, and that will be the time that we have.
One too, right? Okay.
Mine's a staffing question. So at our last meeting with Talent Strategy, they they said if 40% of the students go to a new campus, 40% of the staff should go to that campus. So I'm wondering if 100% of Palm students are going to Bettis, should 100% of us just get moved over there? Is that how it's going to work?
Yeah, so one of the things I would say is if it's a larger population, it's going to be a larger group of teachers, for sure.
Matthias, I want to just clarify. It's not what percentage of your school is going, it's what percentage you
the
make
combined.
up of the school. So what percentage of Perez's new enrollment does Palm make up? So if you're 50% of theirs, or if you're 60% or you're 40, I think we could probably get it for you in a moment.
We have it in the sheet, yeah.
So if it's 50%, then about 50%, roughly.
No, not, it's
Oh.
50% of the total staff, because they're different different school populations. So you take, if we combine the schools and it's 50-50, right? Well, 50% of the total new population is Palm, then I would expect 50% of the teaching allocations at Bettis to be represented by Palm faces, right? So that if it's 100% of a school and the new school is much bigger, we have some of those where the receiving school is like 500 and the school coming in is 150, right? So in that case, it's closer to like 22%, something like that. Now that's just a rule of thumb. Like, our principals, we've talked to them, we've had conversations. They know we want familiar faces. We want our community to know that we are being really intentional and our staff to feel supported. So that's where we would go. But that's kind of a rule of thumb of how we're trying to tackle it, just to make sure we don't ever shy off or deviate too far from our values. Like, let's say that we didn't do that and all of a sudden that principal started hiring a whole bunch of people that weren't Palm staff. That would be a non-starter for me. 50% of the staff at Bettis would be Palm staff. Yeah. Not 50, because the math, it could work both ways. Yeah.
Okay, I think this will.
Yeah, so there's going to be, we are going through a staffing plan for each transition period. It's not always going to be like clear 50, precise. But every time students go, right, they don't come in perfectly neat 22 size blocks, but we're going to have to add staff, right? And the rule should be, and it is going to be, that any new allocation needs to be drawn from the staff here first, period. That's also true of custodial staff. It's also true of food service staff. I mean, everybody, right? Because those are all faces and supports for our students. That's how we operate. Yeah, 100%. Yeah, well, special areas, so essential areas, okay. Yeah, so essential areas is going to be very similar depending. So let's say that the larger student population now kind of releases another allocation for PE, right? Which could easily happen. In that case, that's what would happen. It would be that's how we would do it. When it comes to front office staff, I'd have to, that one's a little bit more difficult because most elementary schools have the same allocations no matter how big or small the school is. So if there was a vacancy, we'd obviously want to pull here for sure. We also have areas where the new students would actually allocate their assistant principal. Well, of course you would want that person to be the assistant principal of the previous school. So we're being very intentional. We also are being, it's important that our principals are talking to each other. We set the stage for it. We have these expectations, and we execute the plan. What I don't want to do is to ever create an environment where families or staff outside of the receiving school are considered before the receiving school. Like, that's not going to happen.
Okay, and this is going to be our last question, and then I'm going to go over the timeline one more time.
All right, so you're talking projections and census and everything, right? You're closing Palm down. Blazer's already busting at the seams. What are they going to do in 10 years from now when Slaughter Lane blows up on population with all the new families moving in? You're still going to need this school to remain open to offset the influx of the new families coming in. This school will be a vital entity for this neighborhood and the growing neighborhood coming.
Yeah, so south of Slaughter Lane, Goodnight Ranch expansion, there are thousands of homes, as you mentioned, going up, right? You think about kind of the way Aikens and Paredes are kind of situated there. There is a plan for investment in years to come, like way down the road for another elementary school, way down south, because geographic proximity matters. Like we never want to be in a position where we're busing kids across town, right? And we will make adjustments when it's adjacent schools, but once you begin to move too far and all of a sudden you're saying, hey, to make this work, I got to put kids in a bus for 30 minutes to go south, like that is not what I want to support. I don't believe our trustees want to support that. So we do look at projections. Right now our plans do consider these moves. You know, I'm happy to go back and explore it and make adjustments. But yes, it does consider that expansion of the Goodnight Ranch in Southeast Austin. And also kind of what happens to Casey Elementary School, what happens to like all the schools, including Cassuth, because there's going to be movement like all the way around in that area. Blazier does have a large area, and what if you could go back in time, I mean, not that you could, but Blazier should have been located much farther south. That's just the honest truth. You know, I wasn't here, that was a long time ago, but that's what's created this like stress in the system in this one geographic area.
Okay, thank you so much, everyone. I'm just gonna, as a reminder, go over the timeline. So we're in phase 3 of this process. We do have upcoming, this is a new opportunity that was added. So we actually tonight have our district-wide consolidation meeting. It's virtual, so you can get on the Zoom with us at 5:30 if you would like. But then we also, on Wednesday night, our board has added a board workshop, and that's where we're going to talk to the board about this draft plan. We're going to talk about some of the ideas that have come from the community to see the feasibility of some of those. And then that draft plan, the revisions to the draft plan are going to go live this Friday, and that will be discussed at next Thursday's board meeting, November 6th. And then the final version we're going to be asking our board to vote on will be the November 20th. So I just wanted to remind everyone of those dates. Just wanted to say thank you to everybody for all of your feedback, and I know that not every answer was the answer that was what you were looking for, but I hope you did hear that we will be looking at and exploring the ideas that you have shared. We have been doing so and cataloging all of those comment cards. There's still time, thank you. There's still time to submit the comment cards through tomorrow. So if there's any new ideas that you thought of, go ahead and get them in there by the end of day tomorrow. Did you want to say any last words?
No, just thank you for the time this evening. I know it's a big disruption. I'm sorry that we're going through this. I am committed to doing it as thoughtfully as we possibly can, given what we're faced with here. So thank you for the time. Like, we will refine, we will update. I'm committed. I will go and do what I need to do. And I hope that you stay with us in this process, because your input absolutely will inform our final plan and also transition. So thank you, and I appreciate all of y'all.